We debated a few months ago about your movie book.
You're very polite, but
About your movie book. Okay.
I debated an atheist who was a little bit more direct.
Yes, that was me.
Okay, let me stop right there because that's not the case.
It was, with Justin Brierley.
You did not want to date him.
He's not really my type.
Look, I only like you as a friend.
First, God friend zones me, and then Frank does.
You don't have to worship God. You can do whatever you want.
Cool. I will.
Apologetics.
Welcome to Apologia, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians. Today, it's one of Dr. Frank Turek's infamous college Q&A clips.
Hello, my name is Carter.
Hello, Carter.
Hey, Carter.
And I'd very much like to begin by addressing your offensive moral law argument that without God as an objective moral standard, we atheists, those who do not have the influence of theism, would be Hitler-esque amoral beings.
Okay, let me stop right there.
Yeah, let me also stop you right there, Carter. I've been listening to Turek for a long time now, and I've never heard him use that language. Hyperbole has its place, but it's not a good faith starting point for a productive conversation to try to put words into the mouth of your interlocutor. This is one reason I like to respond to clips instead of paraphrasing Christians. There's no point in arguing against something the other person isn't saying.
Because that's not the case. I never said that atheists can't be moral. I never said atheists don't know morality. In fact, atheists know morality just like everybody else. We know morality because it's written on our hearts.
We know morality because if the definition of morality involves reducing suffering or increasing flourishing, then we understand what actions correlate to those goals. No heart writing required.
What I'm saying is that atheists can't justify morality. That's the point. In fact, I had to say this several times to Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, that's right. Frank Turek debated the late Christopher Hitchens at least twice.
Where does evil come from?
Religion.
That would have had a little more pull back in 2013, so it makes sense that he'd name dropped from stage.
Christopher, I'm not saying you're a bad guy. Christopher, I'm not saying you don't know morality. Christopher may say that I'm saying he can't be moral. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying atheists can't be moral. I'm not saying atheists don't know morality. They know morality just like anybody else. In fact, I like Christopher. I thought he was a good guy. What I'm saying is you can't justify why not murder innocent people to get what you want. That's the point. It's a point about ontology, not a point about epistemology.
Yes. It's ontology, not epistemology. Frank said this to me in our conversation on Unbelievable.
Right, I'm not talking about the epistemological issue, Paul. I'm talking about the ontological issue. So I'm not talking about epistemology, how do we know right and wrong. I'm talking about what is the ultimate standard of goodness.
If I had $1 for every time I've heard this from apologists, I might be able to retire.
And that's confusing moral epistemology with moral ontology.
Makes the familiar confusion between moral epistemology and moral ontology.
There's a difference between moral epistemology, how we come to know moral truths, and moral ontology.
Specifically moral ontology, moral epistemology.
You don't seem to understand the difference between moral epistemology and moral ontology.
It's not a point about how you know the moral law. It's a point about why does the moral law exist?
Before I would need to explain why a moral law exists, you'd first have to convince me that a moral law exists. At least in the sense that Frank means. Looking back on his conversations with Hitchens then, and me just a few weeks ago, what case does Frank put forth for a moral law?
I think people from the dawn of time have known right from wrong. It's called the moral law written on their hearts, even from a biblical perspective. Because before there was any Bible, God wipes out the entire generation of Noah. They didn't have a Bible, so you don't need the Bible to know right from wrong. There's a standard beyond everybody that defines what is right. That standard is God's very nature. It has to do with the ontological category known as morality. Where does morality come from? Does it come from the benzene molecule, the carbon molecule, the oxygen molecule? In your worldview, where does it come from?
You know that the Jedi are the good guys and say the Sith are the bad guys, or Darth Vader and his crew are the bad guys, because you already have a moral law written on your heart. We have a moral law written on our hearts. That's an effect, so we're reasoning back to a moral
Does he
law
have
giver.
to fucking...
Yes, he puts forth no case at all, but merely asserts that we have something written on our hearts, which he elsewhere equates to general intuition.
But we all intuitively know that certain things really are objectively wrong. It's not just
My God.
Yes, sir.